Welcome to the Align and Abide podcast with Dr. Kim Tran, where we help you achieve your greatest God-given potential. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, it's Dr. Kim Tran here. I host the Align and Abide podcast, where we explore ways to elevate your life through holistic health, wellness, personal development, and entrepreneurship. Together, we'll uncover how you can invest in your greatest asset, your health, and achieve your God-given potential. This episode is brought to you by Minnesota Family Chiropractic, a Christian chiropractic and integrative health clinic founded and led by Dr. Kim Tran, dedicated to helping patients find lasting relief and vibrant health through chiropractic care, nutrition, functional medicine, acupuncture, and inner healing prayer. Minnesota Family Chiropractic is on a mission to transform lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Our team of doctors focuses on whole person care to address the root causes and not just the symptoms, so you can get back to living fully. Ready to start your path towards better health? Visit drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com, or call 612-545-5672 to schedule your consultation and experience integrative patient-centered care. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a special dedication out to Rebecca and Kyle Steve, a couple of my close high school classmates who lost their 9-year-old son, Liam, to a rare autoimmune disorder, MOG-AD, from a flu vaccine injury. And we want to dedicate the show to Liam and every child that died too early due to vaccine injury in heaven. And to every child and adult that is suffering from a chronic health condition caused by vaccine injury. And I just want you to remember, this is God's promise, is that He is restoring you and your body to the perfect condition that God made you. I want to give a big thank you to Patty Carroll and Wayne Rudy, of co-founders of the Vaccine Safety Council of Minnesota, for introducing today's wonderful guest. And I'm honored to welcome attorney Aaron Siri, one of the nation's most prominent attorneys working in areas of vaccine law, medical freedom, government transparency, and informed consent. Aaron is a managing partner of Siri Glimstad and author of Vaccines Amen, The Religion of Vaccines. His work has involved litigation and Freedom of Information Act efforts seek to greater transparency from federal health agencies, as well as testimony and public discussion surrounding vaccine safety and policy. And Aaron, I'm just so glad that you're here. And for those of you who don't know your story, how did you end up devoting a huge part of your career to vaccine law and informed consent?
Well, I think it's one of the true civil rights and individual rights issues of our time. As pharmaceutical companies, which are the largest lobby in the entire country, spending twice as much as the next industry below them, as far as last I checked. Mm-hmm. It is far cheaper for them to lobby to get one of their products mandated, so you have no choice, you have no freedom, than it is for them to actually spend the money to market and convince you on the merits to take their product. So convincing you might take a $500 million campaign. Lobbying might cost them just a few $1,000,000. Which route do you think they're going to do? Obviously, from a business perspective, that's where they're going to go. And you and everybody listening to this, you and your children, your bodies, are in many ways the commodity, the scaffolding on which they need to make their profit. The more that they can control what you ingest, what you inject, and what you wear, like a face diaper, the more money that they can make. And so, when I was at Berkeley for law school over 2 decades ago, and I was in Free Speech Square, civil rights, individual rights, meant something across the spectrum. It meant actually respecting civil individual rights. And so, somewhere along the way, especially accelerating over the last, I would say, 6-7 years, folks have forgotten what freedom really means in this country, in my view. Mm-hmm. What individual rights and the importance of that, and what makes America great is. And so, that I would say at the core, that is what's animated and driven the increasing amount of work that the policy vaccine related work that I do.
No, that's amazing. Many times that we've known this, as far as many of my listeners, we have had omnibus laws that got passed last year that was allowing daycare providers to say, hey, if your child did not follow vaccine policy, we're not going to accept them in. And many people had no idea that this even got passed in. And as you'd mentioned, they're using mandates in order to force vaccinations upon children. And I think the words recommended versus required get interchanged a lot, especially coming up with the school year.
Recommendations are fine. Recommend, right? Go crazy. I mean, think about it like this. The federal government spends billions of dollars, our money, by the way, to convince the public vaccines are great, the greatest thing since, invention of the wheel, and everybody should take them. State health agencies collectively spend billions of dollars to do so. The pharmaceutical industry, which makes billions of dollars, spends incredible amounts of money to using trusted voices like trade associations, doctors, to persuade you that these products are the best thing ever. And media outlets, most of them will try to persuade you. So they have the bully pulpit. They've got every channel and source available to persuade you. Okay. So persuade you on the merits that you should take these products. They don't need to persuade you to drink water. They don't need to persuade you to make sure you eat every day, get some sleep. And if these products are so safe as they say they are, this should be a layup with, they can't even be sued for the most part for the harms caused of the products. So they don't even have to face a bad publicity cycle around having to pay for the injuries that these products cause and the serious injuries they cause.
Yeah.
And so, it should be recommended and then, promote it, vigorously try to get people to take it. But when they say no, that's the end of the road. That should be it, because that's what informed consent is. You inform me and I've chosen not to consent, and that should be the end of the story. Mandates are destructive to individual and civil liberties, please.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually been hearing from a lot of my parents that now on social media, and for those of you out there that don't follow a lot of social media, I want you to realize is that they are targeting your children for vaccines. Like they get vaccine ads, they get medication ads, and that's coming up on their Instagram, their TikTok, their Facebook things as well. So this is something else to look into. Now, when he's talking about some of the mandates that happened, one of the biggest things that happened in the U.S. Congress was the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, which was a huge turning point for big pharma, for the vaccine companies as well. And I know you'd mentioned it into your book. Before the 1980s, really the vaccine companies, they were actually going out of business.
Yeah, leading up to 1986, there were only 3 routine vaccines. That's it. MMR, DTP, and OPV. That's all there was for children, 3 routine vaccines. And but the amount of harm that those 3 products were causing was so great that every manufacturer either stopped making it or went out of business. So you went down from like 6 companies making pertussis vaccine down to 1. I believe it was 6 for measles down to 1, 3 for polio down to 1. And, there was 1 company left for each. Now, a lot of industries face this crossroads where the product that they make is causing more harm than it is good, as we always do measure by dollars.
Yep, absolutely.
And so what do industries do at that juncture? They retool. When they found that asbestos in building materials caused cancer, did they say, oh, hey, look, buildings are really important. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make it so nobody can sue you for the asbestos and you can just keep giving everybody cancer. Of course not. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Every asbestos company went out of business. But in their place, new companies that made better, safer building materials took over. And that has happened across industries with cars, with planes, you name it. But in this one instance, this is the only exception, Congress did something totally unique.
Absolutely.
It said, hey,
and coming up, we're going to be talking about what you can learn about with vaccines and their protection. Hey, it's Dr. Kim Tran, and I'm back with attorney Aaron Siri, author of Vaccines, Amen. And for those of you in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, you are in for a special treat. He's going to be in this Thursday at the Minneapolis Sheridan, speaking and sharing all of his information of what you should know to be informed for yourself and for your own families about vaccines, informed consent, and things and other things that you should be aware of. And you can still sign up through the Vaccine Safety Council Minnesota.org. And for a special discount, you can put in VSCM. Now, Aaron, we left off and we were just discussing how out of all the other industries, when there's a problem that goes through and occurs, they are forced to change. However, with vaccines, because of the 1986 law that was passed, they went through and they actually went game for an industry that was dying off because of how many lawsuits were occurring. They ended up getting the protection from the U.S. Congress. And so now anyone else who experiences a vaccine injury or death, they have almost zero consequences.
Yeah. And it's created a moral hazard, a perverse incentive for how vaccines are licensed and how they're treated post-licensure. Mm-hmm. And we can see that from drugs and how those are licensed and how those are treated post-licensure. So with drug products or cars or planes or building products, you go down the list, chainsaws, okay? Mm-hmm. The company that puts it out on the market, what do they want? They want to make money. Right? That's why capitalism works. They want to make money. And so if they're going to be liable for the harms that it causes, they want to know, the company has a self-interest in knowing, will this product cause a lot of harm? Because if it does, we'll be on the hook and we'll end up upside down in terms of profitability. So with drugs, for example, they'll do multi-year placebo-controlled trials before they're licensed. Why? Because these pharma companies are moral, because they're ethical, because they're altruistic, because it's the right thing to do? No. It's because they have a financial incentive to do so. Mm-hmm. Before they put that drug out, when you've got the folks who are sitting and designing it, they're thinking, okay, what makes sense in terms of designing this to get FDA licensure in terms of our business model? And having a long-term placebo trial makes sense, right? And by the way, everybody out there who's listening to this, if you have a retirement plan, you have 1K, you own stock, right? Where do you want that stock to go? You want it to go up or down? You want it to go up. And what do you expect the companies you invest in to do? You expect them to take the steps that are most likely to make the stock go up. Okay, most people will be like, okay, that means, yeah, you get the drug license. Now, they're not thinking about, they just assume morality and ethics. But the reality is that when the company's operating, they're trying to appease the investors, Wall Street, the board, the CEOs, everybody with stock options, right? Everybody wants that stock price to go up. So they're going to take the quickest path. Now, meaning it's not like some nefarious scheme. It's just the way the economics work. And it normally works pretty well because the incentive for safety is aligned with profitability. But with vaccines, that has been broken. And so what you get is when they're sitting there designing a vaccine trial, a multi-year placebo-controlled trial, while moral, ethical, right, is actually a financially disincentive. They're not liable for the harms. So if they do a longer trial, it actually cuts against their pecuniary interest. And that's why often with vaccines, what you see, most of the childhood vaccines were licensed based on clinical trials that had days or weeks of safety monitoring after injection, maybe up to 6 months.
Yeah.
And underpowered and often and not a single one was licensed with a proper control group that received a placebo.
Absolutely, which is something people don't know. They just assume, oh yeah, they've all been researched. That's why they're here. You know, going back to right before the 1980s when this was passed, as you had mentioned, right before that, there was only 3 routine childhood vaccines. And most of those companies were going out between DPT, MMR, the oral polio vaccine. And now after that was passed from 1986, now you, as you had mentioned, that was 29 injections by the age of 1, according to the CDC. So, I mean, the difference in that is when we were looking at this, as you'd mentioned, the vaccine market was on the verge of collapse before 1986, and now they're over a $56 billion industry. So when we're talking about money making, correct?
Yeah. Yes. It's exploded since then. I mean, listen, if I came to you and I said, hey, I got a business idea, and you said, oh, okay, what is it? And I said to you, listen, I got a great idea. We're going to sell this thing. And you're like, what is it? Don't worry. It gets injected into people. Oh, okay. Well, why would people take it? Don't worry. They'll be mandated to it. They can't go to school. They can't get a job. Okay. What if it hurts them? Don't worry. The government's going to give us liability. What if people protest? Don't worry. They're going to spend billions promoting it and telling everybody it's amazing. What if they still don't want to pay for it? Don't worry. The government guarantees payment. You'd be like, wait a second.
Yeah.
No liability, mandated, guaranteed payment, free promotion. Who wouldn't go into this business? And it sounds absurd, and it is an absurd business model. And it would, but only with vaccines, because they're not viewed as a product. They're viewed as an article of faith. So that's why I call it the religion. That's why I call it Vaccines Amen, the religion of vaccines, because it is a religion. And only when you have that orientation to it and not viewed as a product, you're like, oh, but it's, it's like manna from heaven. We have to treat it with this very careful, and that's a big part of why I wrote the book, is to quote unquote humanize the vaccines and get people to think about them as they are, which are products. They're products.
They're products. They're not tested widely. I mean, even in your book, you actually point out, like, so if you're looking, you can actually get this on Amazon too. I mean, you have some research that you actually said, well, they only followed it for 3 days. How do we know the actual harm that happens to children? How do we know the harm that happens to adults? I actually just had a baby who came in yesterday who's been, because the mom is not informed and she doesn't speak English as her first language, they're pushing her to get vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. And she's bringing in her daughter because her daughter has massive rashes, bumps all over her skin. She keeps getting earaches. She's got all of this allergic reaction happening to her body. And she's like, I eat healthy. I don't eat dairy. I don't have bread. I don't have any tortillas. I don't have these things. Yet her daughter is just breaking out, and the doctors are giving her no answer besides having another cream to put on her skin.
Well, so that's a great individual anecdotal situation where you have a child with some kind of immune system dysregulation, right? That's what that is. Their immune system is, and so it's most likely from what you're describing. But stepping out into the macro, just to take big numbers,
absolutely.
Before 1986, when we were talking 3 injections on or before the first birthday on the CDC schedule for vaccines, under 10% of kids in America, according to the data, had a chronic health condition. Now the data reflect 40 over 50, according to some data, have a chronic health condition, often multiple and often worse. And what are those chronic health conditions that have exploded between the early 80s and today? Almost all of them have some etiology and some form of immune system dysfunction, dysregulation, right? Atopic issues, asthma, go down the list. Even things that people don't think about, like ADHD. Kids with ADHD versus those that don't. Those that have ADHD have all kinds of immune system markers that reflect some kind of dysregulation. And so then you step back and say, okay, NIH has spent billions of dollars to figure out what's causing these chronic diseases to explode. Have they figured it out? No, they haven't. Well, let me give these folks a clue. Here's a clue, people, okay?
It might be in the
Why don't you start with the very products you now gone from 3 injections to 29 injections on them for the first birthday to do what? To literally modify the immune system systemically. The point is to create a systemic change in the immune system when you get a vaccine. So you have immunity, some change between your toe and the top in your ear, right? And in the same way they tell you these are powerful medicines, you should take them. Well, they are powerful, and they can have effects. They can also have unexpected effects. And then so the studies that have been done that compare kids with no vaccines, kids with 1 or more, are consistent. Now, many of them are smaller, some of them are retrospective, they're subject to confounders, but they are consistent in finding the kids with no vaccines have a tiny fraction of the chronic health conditions that the kids that have one or more vaccines have.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these other things that you should be aware of that kids can have are asthma, allergies, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, any dermatitis, psoriasis, diabetes, epilepsy, mental health disorders. So we're seeing a rise in kids are having depression, anxiety, suicidal. All of these things are because there's dysregulation in their immune system, dysregulation in their nervous system, and they're overreacting to normal substances that we didn't react to. So why is it now that all the kids have allergies to peanuts or to things like chicken, other things that we used to eat normally? And that's a big part of the problem with vaccines, and also the fact that the vaccines use tissue from aborted fetal tissue as well as a carrier, which is not helping the situation.
Yeah, I mean, vaccines have viruses need to grow on some kind of substrate, so they need to grow in cells. So some of the viruses that are used in vaccines, like rubella vaccine, is grown in the cultured cell line of an aborted fetus. And so, when they grow the viruses in those live cells, human cells, they then, it's not like they can get rid of all the human DNA and human cellular components when they create the vial of the vaccine. That in every single vial, for example, the MMR vaccine, there's literally billions of pieces of human DNA, billions of pieces.
Absolutely.
So,
and coming up, we're going to be talking more about what's in some of the vaccines, what you need to be aware of, and how that can affect you and your own children. Hey, it's Dr. Kim Tran, and I'm back with attorney Erin Siri, author of Vaccines, Amen, The Religion of Vaccines. And don't be fooled by that title. This is about informing you about what you need to know about vaccines to make the best health decisions for you and your family. And coming up, the Vaccine Safety Council of Minnesota is hosting Erin Siri this Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the Minneapolis Marriott in St. Louis Park. You can find out more and register at vaccinesafetycouncilminnesota.org. Now, Erin, we've been talking about this as many parents are very unaware of the ingredients that are included in vaccines, including aborted fetal tissue.
Yeah, it's the what's in it is actually the DNA and cellular debris from the cultured cell line of an aborted fetus. So that's what ends up in each vial because but it's not just, by the way, that's not the only biological components that end up in vaccines. There's also all kinds of various animal parts, animal blood. That is used as substrates to grow virus to be used in vaccines. And all of that stuff ends up in the vial. But not a good thing to have these foreign materials from various animals and from, from another human being, in that case, the cultured cell line aborted fetus inside the vial. But I will point out, if I may, that, any environmental insult can cause harm. Right. I mean, you expose a child to too much lead, it can cause harm, or almost any amount of lead at a young enough age. Pesticides can be harmful. There's all kinds of exposures that can cause harm. But when you think about the type of chronic health issues that have exploded, and you think about immune system dysregulation, what is the most likely culprit to cause that? Something that actually can have a wayward effect on your immune system, right? Those types of exposures happening when you're an infant. So it's really, really critical that we look at all environmental impacts, as well as, in particular, a powerful pharmaceutical product we are now injecting 29 times on before a child's first birthday.
Well, and this is a huge thing coming up because last week, as we discussed on the radio, is the executive order that Trump just passed, bringing the vaccine recommendation schedule from CDC down from 74 down to 11. Now, what would you say is prevalent about that, especially for parents and for their children?
Well, Well, a few things about. First, I'm not sure. I know I've seen that a lot of folks saying 74 to 11. I'm not sure how that math got that. I don't know how they did that math.
Sure.
It's definitely less injections because there's a number that are not. Okay, let me put it this way. All right. Trump's executive order does not change the CDC schedule. Trump's executive order is directing the CDC to look at it to potentially change the schedule. So as it stands right now, as you and I sit here and talk, the vaccine schedule has not changed. Nothing has changed, in fact, in terms of the vaccine schedule. But there's a directive out there, essentially, for CDC to do it. Now, a federal judge told the CDC you can only change the schedule until ACIP votes. Right now, ACIP is the Vaccine Advisory Committee at the CDC. There currently is no constituted ACIP. So at least vis-a-vis this federal judge, I don't know how they're going to update it. They got to get a new committee in there that apparently will pass muster. With that said, what they did is they took all the existing vaccines on the schedule and they put them into 3 categories. Nothing got taken off the schedule. They're all still there. They're just routine now. Some are considered routine. Some are considered high risk. Some are considered shared clinical decision making. Okay. So all the vaccines that were on there are still there. They're just in 3 buckets. That first category still has a few dozen injections collectively when you add that up. So there's still a decent number. I mean, it's still a lot more than 3 injections.
Absolutely, right?
It's a lot more because it still has DTaP, which is on there as a routine. That's 3 injections just in the first 6 months of life, and then 2 more after that. It still has on it HID, which has 3 injections in the first 6 months of life. Okay, and as well a 4th one, certain brand. It still has pneumococcal vaccine, which again has 3 injections for 6 months of life, and still has polio, which has 3 injections for 6 months of life. So that alone already gets you to over 11. That's why I'm not sure how we're doing but it is less. It is far less. But from my perspective, everything should just be in the 3rd category. Have a vaccine schedule. Have 100 vaccines on it. Have 600 vaccines. But they should all be in the 3rd category, which is shared clinical decision making. That means you get to make the choice along with whoever you want, your medical professional, whatever. Not that it's routine, which really means you don't really get a choice. The idea behind that is not shared clinical decision making. That is destructive to informed consent, civil rights, individual rights, parental rights, go down the list. So there should be 0 in routine. It should all be in shared clinical decision making. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most parents do not know about what's actually in vaccines because no one's offering you the literature when you go in to get a vaccine. And that's a huge problem for people. Even if you do ask for it, now even my parents that come in, they're like, oh, they said I don't want to.
Well, let me ask you something. You go into a car dealership. Is the salesman going to tell you there's a problem with the car? No, that's the doctor. If you listen to the company going to tell you the problem with the car? No, that's the pharma company. Okay. Who's going to tell you? How do you read about an issue with the car? Often you open the paper and you're like, oh, class action lawsuit, seatbelt's defective, airbag's defective, paint's peeling, right? Whatever it is. But you're not going to get that here. You're not going to open the paper and read about how, this pharma company was sued because they could have made this vaccine safer and didn't. So why would the parents know? Who's going to tell them? But the good news is that for most products, they don't need to do a deep dive in the same way they have to do for vaccines, because who has the time to research every single thing? Imagine if you had to research and understand the full workings of a car. You don't have to do that for the most part because the market corrects. When there's an issue, they get sued, or the potential for a suit causes them to make the roll cage better, the crush zones better, the seatbelt better, the airbags better. Go down the list. It will happen. If you gave car companies immunity from any liability, you'd still be driving, whatever car was it when that last committed, probably where you'd still be. Okay. And so But there is an exception to that. The exception is the market will never correct with vaccines. And that's why with that, you really do have to do your own homework. And that's part of why I wrote my book. Or you can go to iCanDecide.org, which is a nonprofit that supports most of the vaccine policy work that my law firm does. We have about 50 people in our firm that just do vaccine-related work. And you can go to their website, iCanDecide.org, and the Get Informed section, and you can get informed, which you really should. Think about what folks look into for just the next item they order off Amazon. They research it. Take a minute, research a medical product before you inject it into your child. It's licensed for a reason. It's licensed because it's not just safe. Otherwise, if it was just safe, it would be over the counter. You just go to the pharmacy and get it.
Well, and this is a big thing that came out with the Act of 1986 because vaccine manufacturers, and this is really important for everyone listening to understand, is it gave them immunity from being sued or from any harm caused by the vaccines, but it also gave them immunity to any other routine childhood vaccines thereafter. And so this is why we're seeing an explosion of what's been happening with vaccines. And the best thing you can do is be informed. I was actually on the plane last weekend flying, and I had a doctor that works for the Mayo Clinic behind me. They were proudly talking about the fact that, well, the insurance company doesn't really pay us enough now. We don't really have the time. So we're going to go through and we just give people medications. We give people vaccines. That's just what it is. We don't have time to really get to the root of this or the problems that people are having. And I think that's something to be said. If your own doctor doesn't have time to research these products that they're giving you, wouldn't you be more concerned and question what's getting injected and given to you or your child?
Oh, you identified two issues there. The first one is that there's no billing code for the most part where they're coding and they're getting to charge the insurer because they made it better. There's no billing code to treat the root causes. There's a billing code to write a prescription for a drug to give you more medical products. But if you go in and you go in for X condition and there was some natural, exercise, lifestyle change that they could recommend, and you did that, there's nothing for them to code for that really, if that result. So that's problem number one. And problem number two is, they know nothing about vaccines because I've deposed pediatricians, immunologists, infectious disease doctors, vaccinologists. And I can tell you, other than the vaccinologists, even those folks, which people think are the ones who know, like pediatricians, they don't know anything about the products for the most part. And you can just watch many of my depositions of these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming up, we're going to be talking about how you as a parent can be more informed, ask more questions. And one of the first places you can actually go to is the Vaccine Safety Council, Minnesota.org. And I would also recommend coming in to Attorney Aaron Siri's talk this Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the Minneapolis Marriott. And you can get your ticket at Vaccine Safety Council, Minnesota.org. Hey, it's Dr. Kim Tran, and I'm back with Attorney Aaron Siri, who, for those of you in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, he is going to be coming in this Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. And you can get your ticket on Vaccine Safety Council, Minnesota.org and use the code VSCM to save $10 off of your ticket. It's just such a blessing because, Aaron, I know that your firm specifically is helping to represent those that have been vaccine injured, that their child may have been passed away from a vaccine injury. Can you get more into what people need to know about if they have experienced a vaccine injury or their child has, what they can do about it and some of the limitations that happen?
Sure. Well, let me just start with the COVID vaccine. If you're injured by the COVID vaccine, that actually has an additional layer of immunity called the PrEP Act immunity. And with those claims, our firm doesn't even take COVID-19 vaccine injuries. I don't know a firm that does, but there might be one out there. There is a program called the CICP. You have 1 year, you can file a claim with them, and you can find that's a federal government program. Now, for non-COVID vaccine injuries, the law we mentioned earlier, the National Child Vaccine Injury Act of 1960, did create a path to get some limited, very limited form of compensation. It set up something that's commonly called the vaccine court, and it's part of the federal court of claims. You get a special master, and you fight against the Department of Justice. And the program is extremely limited because, unlike an actual lawsuit, you don't get any discovery. You can't depose the company. You can't get their underlying documents to be able to actually prove causation. So, with that said, the program has paid about over $5 billion to date for vaccine-related injuries, with a cap of $250,000 for pain and suffering, and a cap of $250,000 for death, as well as other limitations. So there is an avenue of recourse to get some compensation for certain injuries. I think of it more as a policy program, versus what I would consider a traditional court, where it's really about getting to the actual truth. When you can't do discovery, when you have the type of disproportionate power the DOJ has, you end up with basically a policy program, which is that it's willing to compensate certain things and not others, and to a certain degree only, and in certain ways, and only on their timeline, which is very long.
How long does that normally take for an average case?
Depending on whether it's, from what they would call on table to off table, 2 to 6 years.
Which is a long time. They're trying to exhaust you get you to give up before they pay out, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that basically delay is it's a strategy. It's a function of how they operate, which is that even if you have the most straightforward injury, first you can't file until you met typically 6 months severity, so you got to wait 6 months. Then you have to collect all the medical records. By the way, they don't have to give you anything, but you got to collect all the medical records. Then you have to file them and get a statement of completion. Then it takes a long time for the DOJ to finally put in their response. Okay, they get many, many, many months. Unlike any other, even the most complex lawsuit that you file, the other side gets 30 to 60 days, maybe a little bit of extension. Okay, that's it. Here they'll take 9 months. They'll take 11 months. Then you finally have a response. You finally have an initial conference. Then the DOJ will often play games about pretending they want to go into maybe negotiating, to mediation, so forth. And so, even though your client, this was their only source of income, you have a single family single income household. The person who's bringing in the income has now been injured, so they cannot work. About a year and a half, 2 years in, they're so desperate. They're willing to accept often ridiculous offers. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
That we're willing to keep going, but they can't. And I think that that's part of the strategy and tactic of what the Department of Justice, unfortunately, does. And if it's not a strategy, purposeful tactic, then it's just it's a completely broken system in that regard that needs to be fixed. The law itself provided these things should be decided within 6 months. Yeah. That's what it provided, because you gave up the right to a jury trial. You gave up the right to discovery. You gave up the right to depose the other side, to get the documents. You gave up the right to actual pain and suffering, not beyond $250,000. You gave up being able to get counsel who's paid on contingency, so you can really get a lot of, far more motivated attorneys out there. And that's why not a lot of attorneys want to do this work. You gave up, I can go down the list. You gave up the right to an Article III judge. You gave up the right to all kinds of stuff. And in return, you're supposed to get what? Speedy, quick, and fair compensation. You don't get speedy and you don't get fair. So you gave this stuff up and you're not getting any of the benefit. So, in that sense, it really is a miscarriage of justice the way that program currently operates.
Oh, that's so horrible especially for all the parents. And I know those that have had vaccine children, injuries from their children, from themselves. I mean, I see this with my patients on a regular day. Now, for our listeners, what are 3 main takeaways that you want them to know?
Sure. The 3 takeaways are this. Number 1, even if you love every vaccine out there, and you love every mask, and you love every stay-at-home order, and you love, you name it, right? Any kind of product that's currently mandated in medicine, if you don't draw the line that the government should only recommend and never mandate now, The day might come when there is a product you don't want. And then they tell you, you can't leave your home. You can't get a job. You can't go to school, and you can't go on public transportation. You can't go on public streets. Then what are you going to do? Then it'll be too late. Because once you've ceded rights ceded are rarely returned. So even if you're like, what do I care? I love every vaccine. I want to live in my basement and wear 70 masks. Great. Good for you.
The rest of us don't.
Maybe something you don't want. Okay.
Right.
Number two, and I said this earlier, with all the other products out there, there is, with a lot of wrinkles, a general alliance that the company has an interest in assuring safety because it will hurt their bottom line if it causes harm. But because of vaccines, you don't have that. You have to do your own homework in a way you don't have to do in the same way for any product, really. You have to really do your own homework with these products, especially because you're not talking about a trivial thing. You're talking about giving dozens, potentially, of pharmaceutical products to your baby, and onward into the childhood. And number three is that it is to not be afraid to speak your truth on this topic. If everybody out there, the millions and millions of folks who, based on, when you look at the numbers who've been injured by these products, we're not scared of us saying so. We're not scared of being forward about it. I'm not saying get angry I'm just saying just be direct, I see it all the time. This topic comes up and everybody who's got it, they don't say anything. The one person who's being super loud is usually the person who knows almost nothing and is just spewing beliefs. Everyone's going to die without them. Everything, the whole law. It's like, okay, they're very loud, but then, the folks who have, who understand the more nuanced view, they often don't say anything. I mean, you can say the things, just say the truth. Measles vaccine can, to a significant degree, in most people for a period of time, can prevent transmission. See? And if you can stop transmission, you can stop people from getting it, and you can prevent certain harms from measles. And that is where public health authorities want you to stop speaking. But there's more to the story than that. There's far more. You got to look at the whole picture. And you shouldn't shy away from stating what those other issues are with the product. So that's where I would leave it. If everybody did, we'd be in a very different place right now with them.
Absolutely.
Those are my 3 points.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I mean, I know that Liam's parents, they went out on a reach when they posted this online to say, look, our son died of a vaccine injury. But I also know they then allowed other people to change their minds about what they were going to give their kids. And if more parents speak out, if you actually share the truth about what happened to your own kids, to yourself, imagine how that would impact the rest of our community. And Aaron, with the last 30 seconds, what's your last standing point you want to add in?
Oh, more than those 3?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just bring it down.
Well, I'll just repeat that, ICANDecide.org. ICAN is an incredible organization. Like I mentioned, they supported most of the policy work that you'll read about in my book, Vaccines Amen, and that we've litigated and had the privilege to litigate to protect individual rights. And I would encourage everybody to check out their website, ICANDecide.org, as well as the local groups in your state. Support them. They're the ones on the front lines in your state, in front of the legislature. In Minnesota, support your local group because they're the ones who are out there fighting for your rights every day before elected representatives. Absolutely.
And this Thursday, again, you can go to the Vaccine Safety Council Minnesota.org and get your ticket to see Attorney Aaron Siri this Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m.
And all the proceeds from the event, the book sales, the tickets, that all goes to the local group, and that's another way you can help support them.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Align and Abide podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.